Okay, so I understand I'm not under pressure to open up with a joke because you all heard me out there. My microphone was on. So thanks again to the doctor who came out and graciously told me. Thankfully, I didn't say anything terrible and I wasn't in the restroom, so everything worked out great. Okay, so he's right. I do have a very heart-centered approach for things, and I just kind of stumbled upon it because honestly, I work with a lot of adrenal fatigue, GI, and stress and burnout. I honestly really don't even like to work with weight management. It just happens and it just works. And I happened to be telling John about it, and he said, oh, I want you to talk to the people about how all of this works with your weight management and all. And we'd be focusing on something else, getting the root causes right and getting more energy and reversing the adrenal burnout. But then they'd be dropping 10 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, and so on. So I just noticed so much of the emotions and the mentality and mental habits really played a part in it. And so that's what I put an emphasis on. And the more I talked to doctors, not the patients, they could really relate to it. So I said, okay, well, if they want to hear about heart-centered and mindset things, I'll go ahead and talk about it. And actually, I'm even going to start with a type of neuropeptide, neurotransmitter exercise. We're going to have a tiny exercise in physical well-being. And if somebody could tell me when 30 minutes elapses, just raise your hand. I would appreciate it because I have to do something in 30 minutes for you guys. But you'll see these little index cards, very colorful ones right beside you. And I think that everybody knows John Donald here. Is that correct? Okay, so what I want you to do is write down what you most appreciate about John Donald. What is your favorite thing about him? What you really appreciate? I've already done my card and I'll share mine, but really think about what you appreciate about him. Some people are thinking really hard. It's awesome. And Jeff can collect those for John's psychological well-being at the end. You can just pass them down to the end. Okay. Oh, some people are still writing. So I did that because what's the neuropeptide that this gratitude is creating? Yeah, oxytocin, exactly, oxytocin. So the whole gratitude thing, so it's bringing us together. You know, what I appreciate most, and there is a lot to appreciate about John Donald, but something you don't know about him that I appreciate is he's such a sharing person. We go to a lot of the same business meetings and or recreational outings. He and his whole family are big time hikers, and I got to hike with him at Glacier Mountain, and I actually kept up with him. But what he does, no matter how little or how much food he has, he always wants to share it with people, especially me. I don't care if he's down to one paleo bar, I'm going to get half of it. And he initiates that. Would you like some healthy nuts? Would you like this? Would you like? He shares everything. So that's part of the reason I'm even doing this, because it's my way of showing gratitude back to him, because he's always sharing something. So whatever it is that you wrote, he's going to feel great about reading those. Make sure you get those cards. And this is, believe it or not, part of what I do with my clients. When I see that they're really down and depressed, I'm going to try to create some type of brain chemical so they'll feel better. It'll make it a lot easier for them to stick to what they're doing. So that's what we just did. So thanks for indulging me in that. Hopefully I can use that. So the type of weight loss clients we're going to talk about today, not the ones that we all know, maybe you eat too much. We're going to look at cutting out all of these fast foods, this and that. We all know all that. I'm actually working with mentalities, mindsets, habits, brain chemicals, and leaky gut. So that's where we're going to start. But first, we're going to establish a working paradigm. And this is what I share with my clients. So the first one is you are unique. More importantly, the way you respond to food and stress is unique. So your weight loss program will be unique. So I am taking them out of the mindset that everyone has to do Jenny Craig or everyone has to do Weight Watchers. What, you did Weight Watchers and it didn't work? Everything is extremely individualized, and they appreciate that once they understand it. And I don't just really give them this particular diet, like a paleo diet, the ketogenic diet, only the gluten-free, grain-free diet. Of course, we're going to take away some of the foods that they're responding to, but I want them to understand that everything depends on the way you process the foods and the way you process your response to stress. That's how I'm going to create your diet. Mainly because I'm seeing, what I'm sure all of you are seeing, that people can even respond very poorly to healthy foods. So they come eating what they think is healthy, which in a lot of cases it is, like the salmon, broccoli, and in some cases whole grains. And they're actually responding very badly to it, and they don't even realize they are. So instead of me just telling everyone automatically, you need to eat your foods rich in fish like salmon, and you need to eat lots of turkey and so on, I'm going to see how they respond to it first, and I'm going to help them understand how they respond to it. They'll be writing their informal food journals, writing that down so that they can understand, and then they'll know that a healthy food can actually be unhealthy to them. And if it's unhealthy to them, it's probably going to create a lot of residue in their system, which is going to lead to inflammation, and that's going to lead to their fatigue. Because I find that in addition to the excess weight, they also have the fatigue, and that's bothering them more than anything. So I want them to know that coming in, no matter what, everything is going to be individualized to you. So you can just let go of the guilt because Weight Watchers didn't work for you, or so. We're going to really delve in to how you respond to food and how you respond to stress. And if we can improve the way you respond to stress, that's going to help relax your body and put you in that parasympathetic nervous system response, or rest and digest. Oh, and how you respond to foods. We'll take certain foods away, get you healed in your gut, and then bring those foods back again and see if you respond better. And that's how we create your diet. Very unique, very individualized, and everything depends on how you process, how you respond. Then my second one is borrowed a bit from Aristotle. This is a mindset change because we can't help it. Life happens and people are going to think certain ways, and sometimes their thinking sabotages them. And those are the clients I'm going to introduce you to today, the ones where we got results, but then they rebounded, or we found that their own thinking habits were sabotaging them. So I used that for, quote that Aristotle did a long time ago with a little poetic license. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence in weight management, then, is not an act, but a habit. So we all talk about lifestyle habits, but I'm also talking about thinking habits or mental habits, because I see that people fall into mentalities or thinking skills that really aren't serving them, and it's actually causing them to sabotage their own healthy habits, or it's causing them to sabotage their own weight management, and it sabotages their health because they're thinking a certain way that's really causing them to lose emotional energy and mental energy, so they go straight to the foods that are causing the problems in the first place, and they have no idea that they have these particular mental habits. So I'm actually going to emphasize that in people, and they actually appreciate it, and they work harder with my assistance and the assistance of certain family members to think. We just call it a mindset shift, so they can think differently about the way that they're doing things, and we find that they sleep better. And the main thing, they digest or process better. And I like to use the word process with them even more than digest, because that kind of gives them a feeling of, it's okay. This isn't going to happen overnight. This is going to be a process, and it depends on how I am responding to the food. So this helps very much. So I want them to know that as the whole time that we're working together, we're going to be changing your thinking habits. We're going to be changing your exercise habits. We're going to look at this whole program as a series of new habits for you. And when you capitalize or optimize these habits, then this is what we call excellence and not perfection, which is really huge, because one of the things that sabotages certain clients is that they have this perfectionistic tendency. Everything has to be perfect. As a matter of fact, I've had some people who've given up on their eating template or their eating choices or style. I don't really ever like to use the word diet, because they say, why do I always have to be so perfect? And I want to take them away from that. Pretty soon, by the time they finish the program, they're really not even using the word perfect anymore. They're using the word excellence, and it feels really good to them that they were actually able to excel in something. And I find this to be really important with them. So these are some of the things that influence the weight loss response, and there are a lot of reasons for it, but these are some of the things that I am focusing on in this particular genre. So incidences that affect neurotransmitter balance and weight loss response. Stress is huge. That's going to be the one we talk about more than anything, because of course stress affects leaky gut, and people are under so much stress. But even more appropriate to say is the stress response. There's no way right now that with my particular clientele, which are the people who are mostly very near burnout, very tired, that I cannot talk about the stress response. As a matter of fact, I've raised the standard in my own practice, saying that if I don't talk about the stress response and I only talk about the foods and the supplements, then I'm being unethical, because if I can suggest a way for them to handle the stress a little better, even in their thinking skills, and it actually works, then I've done a good job. And that is not to say, oh, I or you, we're psychiatrists or psychologists or anything. We are just helping them to consider their stress response or consider their mindsets. So this gives them a whole new world or a whole new thing to look at. It gives them actually hope. So we put a lot of focus on the stress. And as a matter of fact, in the last 2 years, what I have seen is that I have more doctors coming to the practice or the virtual practice now than lay people, because once they get really comfortable with me, and these are DOs and MDs and so on, they start to open up about their stress and what they're doing that's causing them to stress even more. And right now what I'm dealing with them is more autoimmune diseases than ever, especially with the women. The autoimmune diseases are rising, and with the men, it's resistance to just colds and infection. And they are seeing the abdominal obesity very fast, and that's what's bringing them in. So we talk about the stress. We talk about the chemical burdens or chemical stress, which is your toxic burden. Everything from the pollution to the alcohol, drugs, foods, MSG, everything. That's going to weigh on our neurotransmitters. Food intolerances. And again, not just your regular food intolerances. We see a lot like gluten and dairy, not just those, but also the ones that are the healthy foods that they are responding very poorly to. I know that you probably use a lot of IgG testing. I use ALCAT a lot. I'm probably going to move into doctor's data, but it's been good. And in some cases, which is the first client I'll introduce you to, she lost 40 pounds with us just using the ALCAT and removing those food intolerances. And one of the ones she was very, very sensitive to was coconut. So that was very interesting to work with. But it helped. It made a difference. And all this time, we know coconut's so healthy for us. It's one of the healthy fats. But for her, it wasn't unhealthy. So it wasn't healthy. So it was really nice to be able to point that out. Poor digestion and absorption, of course, and again, I call that processing. Sleep disturbances, that's going to be really huge today. As a matter of fact, one of the people on the education team, Dr. Michael Jurgowitz at Designs for Health, just wrote a wonderful blog post on how to lose fat. Get more sleep. So if you go to designsforhealth.com and you look at the blog, please read his entire presentation on sleep and fat loss. Sleep is totally non-negotiable. So we talk a lot about how to get better sleep and what it happens if you don't. Dietary insufficiencies and downright deficiencies, of course. The meds like the antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, and meds for sleep, and meds for migraines, and how those affect your neurotransmitters. Genetics, because my last client that I'll introduce you to, he's a guy, he totally is a copy of his mother. So that was really interesting to work with, and I'll be able to tell you about him. And then, of course, my personal favorite, a lack of good lifestyle strategies and mindsets. And I like to call them lifestyle strategies because I really engage the people into strategic implementation of these new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things, even down to the particular types of exercise. The same exercise isn't good for everyone. And what if you do have a person who's very low in neurotransmitters and they don't like to exercise? They can't even keep up with walking. So we have to be very strategic in the exercises that we choose for them. And even for us, we're going to exercise today and we're going to move. That's why you're not going to sit for an hour without moving, because we're going to be stellar people who actually live out what we learn and what we talk about. So thanks for indulging me. So my first client I want to introduce you to is Evelyn, and most of these names have been changed or first name only or so, but these are real people, just you won't find them, but she's Evelyn, and I want to tell you about her. She is a really wonderful lady. She's 59 today, but she was 58 at the time we were working together. And the thing that was most outstanding about her to me that I really finally figured out was that even though she told me she really craves carbs and sugars, and her particular carbs she craved were rice and potatoes, and then sugar anything, she really craved comfort. After lots of talking to her, getting to know who she was, where she came from, how she thinks, I finally understood that what she really craved was comfort, not the carbs and the sugars. She is very pear-shaped. I mean, she's pretty normal from here to here, but very wide at the hips. And she was 202 pounds. And she had a ton of food intolerances. I was able to see that because she came with a lot of labs. I didn't have to, she came with them all because her husband happens to be a doctor, so he just took a lot of the labs. He didn't really understand them. He sent them to me so that I could help her, which is how I get a lot of my clients. The doctors can't really take the time to work as deeply as they want, so they send them to me. And she was one of my virtual clients, and I got to see her ALCAT. She's the one who had the sensitivity to coconut and so many things. She also had sleep disturbances. She'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. She couldn't get back to sleep until 6, or it would take her a long time to get to sleep. And when she got to sleep, when she wakes right back up, it's as if she never slept before. She also said that she has been overweight for over 20 years, and she's just been a person of extremely low motivation. So, I mean, she's a very, I think, really sweet and friendly person, but she just said that she just has no motivation in life. She just has no get up and go. She's just existing. There's no aliveness to her. I could see that she wasn't exhausted, but she just didn't have the vitality in her. And she said after you fight weight for 20 years and you can't lose it, what else is there? And then she'd always have a tendency to compare herself to her husband. Okay, so her husband was a doctor. He was very meticulous about the things he ate and the way he exercised, and he loved her so much. I mean, she could do no wrong almost, but she just kept comparing herself over and over to her husband, and that drove her down even more. So that was what we were beginning to deal with. But this, in addition to the ALCAT, which I'm getting ready to tell you about, this is one of the big things that she said that was the opening of it all. She said, my thinking habits stink right now. I feel sorry for myself like a big baby. It's just emotional, so I see myself wanting to comfort myself with food, not caring about if it's poison or not. I think I've lost my strength and focus on taking care of myself. So this was very serious because honestly, when we worked with her ALCAT and I helped her take those foods out of her system, replace them with other foods, and we strategically put some back in, she lost weight really, really fast. I mean, just from taking the foods away, just from relieving the inflammation, definitely because she felt the support from me, she was definitely willing to set aside the sugars and the carbs that were causing her problems. So she lost so much weight. I mean, she got slim hair. As a matter of fact, when we Skyped, because she doesn't live in this state, she always did this little dance, which I do it, but it might mess this up, so I'm not going to do it. But she did this cute little dance on Skype. She was so happy. And all her family members were just calling, what did you do? What did you do? We've not seen her like this for 20 years or so. And so we got to help the rest of the family. She was so happy. And that was just from the foods. But what happened? She rebounded. She gained half the weight back, even though she had lost it. And I said, well, what do you think is the problem? And she said it was the sugar and the carbs. And I said, but with you, it's not just weight gain when you eat the sugars and carbs. With her, when she ate those carbs, She would have awful, awful abdominal cramps. She would go into somewhat of a crying spell. Sometimes she'd have diarrhea because of all the circulating immune complexes left behind. I mean, she really paid a price when she ate those foods. And she knew she was going to. She knew if she sat down with the ice cream or she sat down with the white potatoes, she was going to have about an hour's worth of pain and fatigue. But it got to the point where that didn't matter. She just wanted to comfort herself. So I thought, okay, this is something that, again, we found what she wanted to comfort herself with the most was the potatoes, the rice, and the sugar. She had very little resistance to that. And again, she's the one I was telling you about who always lamented about having to be perfect, because after a while she got used to having her new body, all the weight loss, but she was upset at having to avoid some things still. We had to dig a little bit deeper. And so she was just so sad at always having to be perfect. So I actually had to change that word from her vocabulary so I could take the pressure off of her. But in talking to her, this is what we found out. When she was a preteen, growing up in a very stressful family, as if we don't all have that in our families, one thing that she pointed out was that when she went to visit her mother on her mother's side, her grandmother on her mother's side, and her grandmother on her father's side, a tradition that they always did was they sit at the table, have a fun and comforting time, and the mother on the grandmother's side would have a big container of rice all ready for her. And the grandmother on the father's side would always have a big container of white potatoes. It just wasn't the same if you didn't have those white potatoes and gravy. And that was the tradition. She was always sitting, laughing, and having a fun time eating her rice and eating her potatoes. And that is how she equated comfort. It made everything right. And even as she got older with her own family, the thing they did for fun were all these decadent desserts, everything from chocolate to creme brulee to tiramisu. She loved it. That was fun for her. So while, and still, we hadn't totally found the total reason yet, but whenever she felt down, she knew she would feel up again if she would just have her rice and have her potatoes, or sit down with her husband and 3 daughters and have her desserts. And this was really causing the problems, but all she knows is that she felt better. She felt better, she felt alert, she felt happy. This was great. But then physically, she tanked. First, it was just a matter of weight gain, but then it suddenly was a matter of abdominal cramps and issues and pains and problems. That was horrible. So now, a few years later, husband's desperate. Okay, let's get you to a nutritionist. Let's see what's going on. Now we're looking at all the physical ailments and so on. And now, even after she'd been off of those things and she knew she was probably going to rebound and have some issues, she would eat those foods, pay the price, and then stop for a little while just to go back. So that's when we talked about, I think we've got something else going on here. But just before we got to the real issue, like you said, we did remove the offending foods. We did repair her gut she was able to take GI Revive. She was able to do GI Microbex. We did a little bit of extra aloe that worked with her. We were able to do the probiotics. I suggested we do exercise, very low impact for 30 minutes a day, but her motivation was so very low, she didn't even want to do exercise. And at that time, the exercise was only walking for 30 minutes, but that was even too much for her. It helped a little bit when I paired her with her daughter to walk, but I ended up having to do something else altogether different for her, and I'll tell you that at our 30-minute mark, which I don't have my watch on, so hopefully. Keep going, thank you. So she was good, but we had to do that. I had to be cognizant of what I asked her to do with exercise. After a while, she would send me emails like this: I lost another 8 pounds this week, or I'm down 40 pounds now. Everybody's asking me what I did. And one of the big things I did for her was take her off grains, and we used the book called Against All Grains by Danielle. I don't remember Daniel's last name, but Against All Grains. And again, we use all the GI products, all the GI Revive, and emphasizing GI Revive because I have a client who couldn't do the GI Revive, and I'll explain that later. We did help her with cleansing. She did very well with the Paleo Cleanse DF because she really needed her glutathione, TMG, all of those things. She did really well with that. Inflammatone was huge for her because she had so many circulating immune complexes. When she did choose to eat those foods, that she'd go into so much diarrhea, and it was just day in and day out. We thought, oh, you're going to have to go to the hospital to be rehydrated. But giving her the inflammatone really helped stop that, and it only took maybe about 3 days. But the inflammatone worked so well that she didn't have those irritants, so she wasn't having the diarrhea anymore. That did a lot for her mentality. And of course, using our fish oils with her. With her, I used the Ultra DHA just because that helped to promote the weight loss faster in her than the regular fish oils. And I'm getting a clue more and more to what's going on. But again, this would work for her, but she would regularly rebound. And I didn't really get it. And as a matter of fact, with the labs that she brought, which I wasn't able to put some of her labs on the screen, but I want to tell you about her CDSA. In her CDSA, which I can pass this around, she had +3 on yeast, and she was positive for parasites. So those were definitely her pathogens. And of course, she ate tons, not just a little bit, but tons of rice and potatoes and sugar. Any wonder we were having issues with the yeast and the fatigue and everything slowing her down. But what is even further was that as a result of that, she was upregulating the enzyme called IDO. And as an effect, her quinolinic acid levels were very high. Again, I'll pass this around if you want to see that. Because her quinolinic acid levels were really high as a result of the yeast and the parasites most likely upregulating that IDO, she had very dangerous quinolinic acid levels that were crossing her blood-brain barrier. And because of this, it was promoting all of that inflammation, and it was interrupting her sleep. So whereas it was wonderful to try to work with Insomnitol chewables, worked a little bit, Neuromag, it worked a little bit, because she kept introducing the yeast to her via her sugars and her breads and all of this, we kept seeing that we saw this really high level of quinolinic acid, and it was really acting as an excitotoxin to her brain, and it was causing the problems with everything. I think it was even driving her tendency to compare herself so much and to really start to feel sorry for herself and wonder, well, why me, and why do I have to be perfect, and why can't I be like my husband, why can't I be like my daughters? It's just so sad. Thank you. I think this was definitely the problem. So it behooved us to pay even more attention to explaining to her why she really didn't have a choice but to drastically reduce, and in some cases stop, all of the sugar and the rice and the potatoes. And we did it in a really creative way, but she needed help with a neurotransmitter. But this was really huge for her because her husband did have a SIBO test done on her, and she didn't have SIBO, the birth test, it didn't show up, but she definitely did have the leaky gut. She definitely did, as you can see, or if you would like, she definitely did have the yeast and the parasites. She definitely started with the urinic acid, and that moved into the quinolinic acid, and that caused the problem with her brain. That caused for her the depression, even though she didn't see herself really as depressed, and she never really said she was depressed. Even though she was down, she didn't have the zest and vitality, and it was because of this. So taking away her carbs, so much excess carbs and the sugar, and replacing it, talking to her about this is what helped when we got the quinolinic acid levels down. This is really what helped her to sleep well, and it's really what helped her mindset to change before I introduced the dopamine to her, and it also helped her to exercise better. So instead of her going from this to this to this, we made the discovery, and I just thought, because it was the only test thanks. It was the only test she didn't submit was a neurotransmitter test. So I did a neurotransmitter test on her. And I don't know what you use, there are lots of things to use, but I use neurogistics.com. I just use my own designs for health supplements because I've been using them since 1999 and they work, and I know how they work and I know how they improve them. So even though they might suggest some other supplements or their brand, I always use my designs for health. But here in her neurotransmitter test, I found that she was low in serotonin, quite low in dopamine, low in norepinephrine and epinephrine. It was really, really rough there. And it's very interesting with that serotonin because what does quinolinic acid do? It actually steals tryptophan. And when it steals tryptophan, you're not going to be able to make your serotonin. You're not going to be able to relax or sleep. So yet again, even if I gave her the Neuromag, if I gave her the Insomnitol or whatever, they work a little while, but until I addressed the pathogens or the issues that were causing her to raise in her quinolinic acid, I was going to keep having a serotonin steal, and she was going to keep being down. But more so, her dopamine levels were so low. That's why she had such low motivation. That's why her moods were bad, because you're thinking, oh, you've got your new body. This is going to be wonderful. This is going to be great forever. But I didn't relate it to the fact that she wasn't really deriving pleasure anymore out of the things that she liked to do. But she saw pleasure when she was with her family members who didn't have the same problems she did. So she wanted those carbs. She wanted those things, even if it cost her a price. But when I was able to get her dopamine levels up as a result of this, she didn't need that anymore. So she didn't need to eat with them. Even when they had the sweets, even when they had the rice and potatoes, she was fine. And just to make sure that we kept the dopamine levels up and we kept that mindset up, I took the time to spur on her creativity. What she loves to do, she loves to cook for her staff, her husband's staff, and do different things. So we got her all the healthy types of cookbooks, and I had her work with those cookbooks and help make them healthier, do it her way. That kept her creativity up, which helped keep her dopamine levels up. But I actually did use Dopa Boost for her. Dopa Boost for her made the difference, and it kept her in a good mood. So, but one of the exercises I had to do for her was the stability ball. And with that, our 30 minutes are done. So we're going to stand up and do some exercises and some movements before we get back. So I hope you'll come up here and get on the stability ball. We're going to use the bands, the resistance bands, all of this, because it's really bad to have a sedentary lifestyle. We can't do that. Just a quick recap. Remember, we got her to successfully lose the weight. That was great. She removed toxicity. She improved her digestion, but she rebounded, and she rebounded because at that time, I only worked with all the labs that were given to me, a couple of labs I thought about, but I'd never thought about her neurotransmitters. But continuously hearing why she did what she did, I thought we might have to have some more brain action in this. Checked her neurotransmitter levels, saw the low dopamine. Let's build some dopamine. And we did work with some foods that help with dopamine production, such as almonds, dark chocolate, bananas and watermelon, eggs with hydrolyzyme. That's my motto. I always call it eggs with hydrolyzyme because I think that eggs are hard on some people, and if I use the hydrolyzyme enzyme, it completely obliterates those eggs and you're not going to have the kickback with them. I've even had people who really have huge intolerances to eggs, and the hydrolyzyme helps. They don't feel a thing. So usually I train people to just start taking hydrolyzyme with the eggs. She had a bit of a problem with eggs, not too bad at all. Alcat proved that, but I did notice she got a little tired. So taking the hydrolyzyme, we fought that fatigue. So anywhere you see eggs, I'm probably going to say eggs with hydrolyzyme. And those capsules are just so tiny, easy to just take one, eat your eggs. And it works for all proteins except for rice protein, but it works fabulously. Fish, apples, avocados. Of course, we definitely would like organic apples and so on. Organic strawberries. Love that one because it prevents damage to the dopaminergic neurons. The berries are huge, and the fermented soy products. a word on the berries. I remember telling the founder of the company, the president of the company, Jonathan Lazat, how much I like paleo reds. And I'm pretty energetic anyway, but taking this one, I would always feel extra energy. I said, oh, this is really great. And it was only later that I found out about the very berries in this paleo reds would help with producing dopamine. So in addition to making sure the clients were well hydrated, I wanted them to be nutritionally well hydrated. So I would have them put about a tablespoon of the paleo reds into one of their drinks. And I always make sure that they go out and buy either a BPA non-leaching if they're going to use plastic container or a glass container. I mean, we change everything. We do little habits here and there. And they would put their paleo reds and water together, drink that, and it would begin to uplift their mood. And just delving into it more and more, I saw that it helped with the dopamine production as well. So of course, we want to eat our foods, but you're in a hurry, or you forgot, or you don't have someone like John sharing his food with you all the time. You ought to take some paleo reds. It really helps. And using 1 to 2 dopamine capsules, go back, have your dopamine levels checked and so on. But it's kind of like a quiet little secret. It's really nice. So this is one of the things I had her and other people on as well. But this, again, made the difference. And I totally agree with the mind over matter. But sometimes when a person is just so shot, so down, whether from their own repeated poor thinking habits, or they have some major stress happening in their lives, they really do need some extra help. And remember on hers, her serotonin was so low. So it helped her husband to know that not only was it just a matter of, oh, well, let's just give you some 5-HTP, or, oh, let's just give you some insomnitol. It's got 5-HTP in it. I had to show him the line where the yeast and the parasites were likely causing the excess quinolinic acid that was absolutely stealing the tryptophan and then lowering the serotonin. So that's why it gave him more ammunition to support her lovingly to stop those things, because it was going to have such a huge effect on her serotonin. And her diet, by the way, was, we still went gluten-free, but we did a type of an autoimmune diet, like autoimmune paleo, not so much because she had the autoimmune issue, but because she was so sensitive to so many things. And the last thing we wanted to fight was an autoimmune disease that just popped up. So this is what we did. But we really worked very closely for her to submit her journals to see how she reacted to food. She's a total pro at it now, looking at how she reacts to foods. And she does use enzymes to help her along the way, especially allergyzyme if she's out. And she digests the animal proteins pretty well. So we can do hydrolyzyme and digestzymes just to help move those things, because she's prone to the inflammation. And so far, as long as she keeps doing very, very well, everything's normal. Normal movements, no diarrhea, and her moods stay up. Okay, these were the lifestyle and mindset strategies like I used for Evelyn, the activities that prompt her to use her creativity. That helps keep the dopamine in line. So she was always coming up with some new way to make a new food. That was wonderful. Her exercise, which eventually got to the walking, but we first started out with the stability ball. Just to help her with her posture even more, I suggested an exercise called eccentrics, which I have that on the DVD player. But if you go to www.eccentrics.com, and that's spelled there, ESSENTRICS, it's kind of like a combination of ballet and tai chi and stretching, all these movements that help with posture, pain, mobility, weight loss, and energy. And it's a mother and a daughter who do these movements. And at our next 30-minute break, I'd love for you to come up and see that, because it's easy to do. Now, it's not for everybody, so especially if you're someone who is a weekend warrior, you've been in the gym, or you're used to hard exercises. This is going to be more for people who complain, as the doctor said, of the low back pain, or the people who are very low motivated and they need something slower and more fluid. The eccentrics is very compatible with them. It works really well. So I definitely want you to see a demonstration of it, because there's free videos on that website that they can buy, that they can try out before they buy it. And I find that they like it. Even some men do that, but that's a really nice one. And again, I used the stability ball first, went into eccentrics, and that really supported the posture along with her dopamine, and the posture of course itself was good for her well-being. We enhanced her environment for sleep. So we did everything from explaining how she was really being affected by her carbohydrates, and the wrong ones, too much of the wrong ones, and her sugars. But also we had to work with her and her electronics, because when you're down like that, sometimes what do? You just watch TV so you can live someone else's life. And she would have her TV in her bedroom, and she'd watch it, and all that blue light would get in. This is what we used for her. You recognize these, right? So would you like to model it for me? Thank you. These are Uvex safety glasses, amber glasses that cut out the blue light. And that's our beautiful model. Sure. So she could look at her electronics without her melatonin production, thank you so much, being halted. Even now on this website, lowbluelights.com, they have these type of glasses, but they also have these glasses for $7 or so on Amazon. But they have these shields to go over your iPhone and to go over your iPad and even your computer screen. And I think they have an app even. I never found the app to work. Maybe it's just me and my computer frailties, but it really works well. I wear these. No, I'm confessing today at the end a lot of things, so you'll know. But I wear these too, and these are kind of nice. And that will help her with her melatonin production, because even quinolinic acid will blunt your melatonin production as well. So we're doing everything. When I say lifestyle habits, we're going to look at lifestyle habits. And her husband already used one of the shields for his computer. And even on that site, there's a wonderful talk by one of the founders of the Low Blue Lights. And today he's 91. Then he was 88. But that talk is fabulous. So you might want to listen to it. It's really great about the low blue lights and the motivation. It's free. Okay, what's the name of the app? It's called Blue Light Filter. Blue Light Filter at the App Store. Perfect. You heard it from her. That's great. I knew there was one. I just think I have.
I think there's multiple. But
there are?
That one doesn't. It's free. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Write that down. So now if she needs to take her Insomnitol chewables, which I recommend that one. A lot of you do take melatonin, or you can just take one. It'll give you just 1 milligram of melatonin, or take 2 to give you 3. But to me, it's a weight loss aid. That's why I have it there, because if you're not sleeping, you're not burning fat, you're not losing weight, and you're hurting your health, and you're decreasing your longevity. So if you need the help, go through the catecholacom, which she didn't need, or the Insomnitol chewables, or something like that, a neuromag, anything to help calm, relax your mind, your body. These things will help, and using something like this will help even more. And her mindset shift was from one that I suggested. Again, I just suggest or help them consider, because by now they know that I really care and they can trust me, and they already know, even though I had a minor in psychology and all that in school, I don't even really tell them that. I just am helping you to consider your mindset shift. If you need to compare yourself to anyone, compare yourself to who you were last month or last year. I only want her to compare herself to herself. For her, that was huge, because she was no longer comparing herself to her family members and friends or something. She was looking at her own progress. If she did really well, yay, yay, we cheered her on. If she did really poorly, okay, it's no problem. We can get up again. What's going on? Why do you think we did this? Where were we? And really, it's not that I spend 2 hours looking at her minds and set or anything. It's just when it comes up, then we can talk about it. And one of the things that I was telling you about being the model, that's what I am as well. And I have my supplements out there. They know what I take, because that ends up causing her to respect me even more, because she knows that I'm going to do what I need to do, even if it means putting boundaries up, because I won't talk to her or anyone on Saturdays or Sundays, because I've got to take care of me. So I encourage her to take care of herself, which that is going to be our next client that I'm going to introduce you to.